Today I'm going to be showing you how to take your garage floors from looking like this to this with the EpoxyShield garage floor kit. The first step is going to be to get everything off the floor of your garage. This part was hard for me because what does everyone do with all this stuff? I don't have a basement in my condo, so I had to pile it up on my front porch and put everything valuable inside. Once I got everything out, I blew out the garage to get any large debris and swept and used my shop vac in the corners. The next step is going to be to power wash. Like most projects, prep is the most important part for this one. You're going to want to get the floors as clean as possible so the epoxy sticks to the concrete. I used my deck scrubber as well to try to loosen anything that was stuck to the floors. After going back and watching what I had filmed, I was power washing for about an hour here. I think I spilled some primer on the floor, so I was working really hard to try to get that cleaned up the best I could. After power washing, it's time to use a degreaser/concrete cleaner. This will help remove any paint or oil that's on the floors. I put some on the spot where I spilled the primer and just let it sit for a while. I used my deck scrubber again to try to loosen up anything that was really stuck to the concrete. Once I got that all scrubbed, I used my power washer again to spray out the garage and make sure there was no residue left from the degreaser. Then I rinsed one more time with the hose and used my squeegee to get out a lot of the remaining water. Next, it's time for the edge. This comes in the kit, and it is an acid used to open up the pores of the concrete so the epoxy can adhere better. You'll mix the etch with about 2 gallons of water in a watering can. The watering can is used so you can evenly distribute the etch across the garage floor. You'll work in sections, and you'll always want to keep the floor wet while doing this part. After you spread the etch, you'll use your scrubber again to make sure it really gets into the concrete. I sprayed the sections down once I finished them just to give them a quick rinse. After I was done doing all of the sections, I rinsed the floor once again. I tried to go over it a couple times because I wanted to make sure I got all of the etch and any other residue cleaned off the floors. Then I used my squeegee to go over the floors and get all of the remaining water off of them. This is going to be a really important part because the floors need to be completely dry before you do the epoxy. I also used my blower to get water out of any of the divots. I let this dry overnight with fans on it, and then it's time to do any patching you need to do. I have these areas where the concrete is kind of crumbling away, so I'm going to be using the Epoxy Concrete Patch and Repair Kit. You need to make sure you fix any cracks before laying the epoxy or it can peel. This is just a 2-part epoxy that you mix 2 parts of the part A to 1 part of the part B and then spread it into any cracks that you have. I ended up using the entire mix because I had quite a few areas that were chipping away and I figured it couldn't hurt. Then I taped up the wall where the drywall met the concrete so I wouldn't get any epoxy on it. After the patch dries for about 8 hours, you're ready to do the epoxy. It comes in a bag with 2 parts. You make sure everything is mixed up and then you roll the bag so one part combines with the other. You want to make sure that this is thoroughly mixed. I started by doing the trim. I just used a chip brush and this part was super quick and easy. You can really just throw it on there and it goes on like paint. The epoxy is pretty watery to start. You can try to stick chips on the vertical areas, but I didn't really think it was necessary. Once your trim is done, it's time to roll. I got a 14-inch roller to speed up the process. You want to roll in a W and make sure you have a lot of coverage. You'll work in about 5 foot by 5 foot sections, rolling first and then throwing the chips. When throwing the chips, you'll want to throw them up as high as you can to get them to evenly disperse. A note about the chips. Buy an extra bag. I didn't think I was doing the chips that thick because in some videos I watched, the professionals doing this absolutely covered the floor. I ended up running out of chips about halfway through and having to go run and get more. Then you work through your next sections, over-rolling the last section you did so the different sections blend together. Now you can be done after this and leave it as is. One thing I did want to mention is that you will be able to see the areas where you did the patching if you leave it now. They're just a little bit shinier than the other areas. I'm going to do a top coat, so it didn't really matter for me. I'm using the EpoxyShield Clear Finish for my top coat. Again, you don't have to do this part, but it will add a lot of life to your floors, and if you're doing all this work, you might as well make them last. Unfortunately, this is the most expensive part as well, but this is definitely the easiest step of the entire process. You'll roll the bag to mix the two parts together just like you did for the floor coating. Then this also comes with anti-skid additive. If you're not doing a top coat, you can buy the anti-skid additive separately and add it to your epoxy kit. You'll do the same steps here as you did previously, doing the trim first and then rolling the floors. This was a really quick and easy step to finish out the project. I believe you're supposed to do the top coat within 7 days of doing your epoxy floors. Once that dries, you are done. You have to wait a couple days before you're able to drive on it. I'm so happy with how these turned out. It was a really nice upgrade to my garage and they're much easier to clean. I think the end result is worth moving everything out of your garage for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.